Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's great that it's my first time coming to one of these Sustainable Energy Alliance meetings, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm glad that there's a community in Delaware that's interested in sustainability. We at Xergy are very excited, very much part of the whole sustainability equation, and I'm going to take a few moments, if you will, to just introduce myself and share some of the background, some of the reasons, if you will, why we're in business and what excites me, what gets me up every day, and to do what I'm doing. So, getting right into it, I think there's yeah, okay. So I usually start off by saying that I'm a global citizen, but actually, in fact, I'm Iranian-born, and I'm a U.S. citizen, proud U.S. citizen, naturalized. And I've been in the United States since 1986, and I live in Sussex County. My background basically is that my parents worked for the Iranian Foreign Service, and I ended up traveling around the world with them. Ended up going to University of London in England, and went to Columbia University in the US. Started working for Gore. While I was in New York, I worked for a company called Forex, and eventually ended up at Teledyne Energy Systems before I started my own businesses. And that was I had a 10-year non-compete when I started my own business, so I ended up getting into real estate and opened up some laundromats. And I've been into various businesses down in Sussex County before I started Xergy. And but the take home here really, more than anything else, is that are three things. The first thing is that I very much have a global perspective on things, and you'll see in my presentation, you know, that we work globally, work internationally. We're involved with a lot of things on a sort of global basis, and I'll be comparing at some points technology overseas with what's going on in the U.S. Second thing is that you know, being Iranian, growing up in the 70s and 80s in the West, you definitely have a sensitivity or sort of level of interest in energy affairs and oil and what's going on in revolutions and stuff. So I've been in, you know, and really because of all that, because I'm an engineer and I'm Iranian, you know, I've been in this game a long time, 30 years. So when it comes to new technology, when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to a lot of these things, you know, there's always been a lot of hype and a lot of excitement about new products, and then they don't happen. And I remember when I was at Gore, and we got involved in the side exchange memory product there. At one point, Bob Gore turned around to me and said, Bamdad, fuel cells were 5 years away 20 years ago. And you know, it's important for us to stay very grounded when it comes to sustainability and talk about things that are real and that are today issues, that are possible today. Now, for us, 9/11 was a really big deal, but you know, there's another date in the energy world that's probably as important, and that's 3/11/11. And does anybody know what happened on 3/11/11? No. Fukushima. There was a nuclear, the Fukushima Daikin nuclear power plants, their backup generators didn't work, and there was a massive disaster, if you will, in Japan. But what a lot of people don't realize is that fundamentally changed the outlook for nuclear power globally, and transformed really the energy picture in so many ways globally, and it's still a factor today in a lot of things that happen. But in the European Union, countries like France and Belgium, where they were producing about 80 or 90% of their electricity using nuclear power, have essentially abandoned nuclear power. They've decided that they're going to mothball all their nuclear power plants, and they're shifting heavily to natural gas. And in the next 10, 15 years, Europe is going to essentially be $1 trillion natural gas market. And they need supply, and the only supply really is from Russia right now. And so there's a lot of upheaval in the Middle East, with people trying to get access to Europe, across countries that are not giving them access, with wars and a lot of turmoil. North Africa too, with Libya, all about getting natural gas to Europe. And so what's happened, and Europeans know this, you know, it's a sort of, they see the backlash with immigrants and stuff with what's going on, is that there's a real impetus in Europe to get renewable energy and to try to get as much of this capacity that they're mothballing in the form of renewable energy. And the same thing, incidentally, is happening in China. China's energy picture is growing. The same thing's happening in BRICS, you know, Brazil, India, South Africa, and there's a massive shift towards natural gas and also a massive shift towards renewable energy. And so in the European case, the EU's mandated that 20% of their generation capacity is going to come from renewable energy. There's a massive effort with new investment, and I was just traveled to see some customers and some vendors in Europe. I happened to go to 3 or 4 countries, drive through 3 or 4 countries, and one of the things that startled me was that, because I go to Europe a lot, was the huge new level of investment that they've been making in wind power and renewables. You see it everywhere. And I was at Rotterdam at in April at the International Energy Agency conference on heat pumps. And I went to the Rotterdam Maritime Museum. You know, it's a big port, massive port. And they had this huge exhibition on how they're going to build wind farms out in the North Sea. And they're moving a lot of the capacity that they used for building North Sea oil platforms in Northern Europe towards building wind generators out in the North Sea. But there is definitely a big push, and China too is leading the way, if you will, with investment into renewable energy. So here's some of the pictures from my car of wind generators on the side of the highway in Europe. And when I got into Paris, when I rented the car, it was not in France, and they said to me, you know, by the way, you need a CRIT air permit. Well, what's a CRIT air permit? Well, apparently in Paris, you need this little sticker on your car, and depending on what the fuel consumption is in that car, what it uses, you have to pay, you know, so much a year to have that. You have to buy that permit before they'll let you in Paris. I happened to get in anyway without it. And on the Sunday, this was right at the end of last month, and on this Sunday, October 1st, they had this one day in Paris with no cars. And they're mandated, the French government's mandated, you know, that all hydrocarbon-fueled cars will be out, you know, will not be allowed after 2040. So there's a lot of drama, if you will, around renewable energy in Europe, and I think it's interesting to share with you. But from a U.S. perspective, and I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying this, but we are behind sort of the global technology race for renewables. We're behind in the installation race for renewables, and U.S. And of course, one of the reasons is we have plenty of cheap natural gas. It's hard to get decent ROIs on some of these projects when you know, the competing technology is great and provides great returns. And a lot of the push that's, you know, on what's going on is especially in Europe, but also in the Far East, is around pollution, around global warming and reducing CO2 emissions, but it's not ROI. And a lot of these projects that are going on overseas are heavily subsidized by their governments to a level that actually is not available in the United States. But I think it's a fact that there is a global industrial revolution going on, and if we don't participate, there will be consequences. And also, I should say, it's very, very important that renewable energy is a source of job growth globally, tremendous job growth, and that's an opportunity for the United States. So here's some big buts, all right? Yes, all this renewable energy is interesting. Yes, they're putting all this capacity in Europe and China and everywhere else, but there are some real serious issues with renewable energy. And one of them is that there aren't really good, excellent storage solutions, and the technologies are inherently intermittent. Whether it's solar or wind, they don't produce energy exactly when you need it. And we need some really good technology for storage. A lot of the energy appliances, viable energy appliances that can use renewable energy are not quite here yet. And for sure Tesla's doing great, and a lot of electric cars are being built, but there's 75 million cars a year produced. And do we have enough lithium? Do we have enough components to completely transform the transportation infrastructure? We need, there needs to be ongoing and continuous innovation still to make this a reality. Another fact is that renewables can't displace fossil fuels in the near term. We don't have enough land. We don't have enough, if you will, wind resources available where we can easily build wind turbines or even solar panels to be able to displace fossil fuels. And the other thing is that the economics right now for a lot of renewable technologies is kind of marginal, and people shouldn't expect subsidies to last. I mean, one thing that was interesting for me was in a few states in Germany, and when they had a budget crisis, the first thing they cut was subsidies for renewable power. So these things really have to work on their own economics. And you really have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is this chart that the EIA has provided on how they expect energy generation to progress over the next 20, 30 years. And what you find is that, yes, renewables are going to grow. They're going to grow substantially. The good news is we can probably have 10 times the amount of renewables that we have right now. And there's going to be tremendous growth in renewable energy. And if you're in that business, there's a lot of opportunity. But at the end of the day, the majority of energy that's produced, 80% plus, is going to come from hydrocarbon sources. And it's not going to come from renewables. And that's just a simple fact. And so, before I talk about Xergy and our products, what I want to say is that the energy generation picture is really half the picture. It's not the full picture. We really have to look at energy consumption, okay? If we're interested in sustainability, if we're interested in renewable power, and yes, okay, we can probably install 20% of today's capacity in renewables, but if we have total energy demand, that could be 40%. It could be double. So if we don't look at energy consumption as a critical issue, then we're kind of forgetting what the real mission is about, which is to reduce